Let's now move on to producer surplus. I will begin by reminding you the concept of supply. Supply shows the relationship between the price of a good and the quantities that producers are both willing and able to sell over a given period of time, assuming all other factors remain constant. The supply curve represents producers' marginal cost and therefore their minimum willingness to accept. The supply curve essentially shows the lowest price at which producers are willing to sell each additional unit of the output. For example, suppose producers are willing to sell the first unit at £6, the second at 8, the third at £12, and the fourth unit at £18. As output increases, the minimum price that producers are willing to accept rises due to increasing marginal cost. Now, let me introduce the concept of producer surplus. Producer surplus is the difference between the price that producers receive and the minimum price that they are willing to accept. Using an equation, producer surplus equals the amount actually received by the producers minus their minimum willingness to accept. I will now draw a demand curve on the same diagram so that we have a market equilibrium where demand intersects supply at point E. The market equilibrium price is £12 each, while the market equilibrium transaction quantity is 3 units. At the price of £12, producers will supply the first 3 units. The fourth unit will not enter the transaction because producers would require at least £18 to sell, which is higher than the market price. Let us now calculate the producer surplus for each unit. For the first unit, producers receive £12, but are willing to sell it for £6, so producer surplus is 6. For the second unit, producer surplus is 4, as the price that producers actually receive is 12, and the minimum that they are willing to accept is 8, so £4. For the third unit, the producer surplus is 0, as the price that they actually receive is the minimum that they are willing to accept. Adding this together gives a total producer surplus of 6 plus 4 plus 0, so £10 altogether. On the diagram, the producer surplus for each unit is shown by the vertical distance between the market price determined by the intersection between demand and supply, and the supply curve, which represents producers' minimum willingness to accept. Again, when the quantity traded is very large, it is not practical to calculate producer surplus unit by unit. Instead, we use an area to demonstrate total producer surplus. When we add up all those small distances across the equilibrium transaction quantity, producer surplus becomes an area that is under the market price, the price received by the producer, and above the supply curve, bounded by the equilibrium transaction quantity. This shaded area here, the total producer surplus, represents the total benefit that producers receive from selling in the market. Together, the sum of consumer and producer surplus is called total economic surplus. These concepts, consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total economic surplus, will help us evaluate the overall welfare created in the market and are very essential tools for analyzing the impact of government interventions such as taxes, subsidies, price controls, and changes in the market conditions.